Signal seekers, this is your wake-up call. You've been hearing it in the noise, seeing it in the static. Are you receiving the frequency? Strange lights, lost places, forgotten stories. The signal has always been there. If you can hear this transmission, you're already part of the signal. Welcome to Backwoods Signal, broadcasting from the edge of reality.
All right, everybody. Sorry about the delay. There was a little bit of a technical issue. Are you guys able to hear me okay out there? Hopefully. So tonight, I'm going to do things a little differently. It's a holiday tonight. Probably not a lot of people checking in. So we're going to have probably people coming back and watching this later, which is fine. What I planned for you guys tonight, and I'll probably, oh, good. Thank you. I'll probably go back and edit this in a way that will make it a lot more watchable as a standalone for this. But what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to go over something that very few people ever talk about in the paranormal community, the cryptid community, the UFO and UAP community. And that's how I go about doing the research that I do and the investigations I do. Because there are people out there that are wanting to learn. There's people out there that are curious about it. And this is your opportunity to find out from somebody that's been around for a while. And at different times, I've done different types of investigations over the year. And my niece texting me. I have not really explained before exactly what goes into investigation and research, but this is the moment. This is where we're going to start talking about what separates out an actual researcher and investigator from somebody who is really just wanting jump scares and clickbait. So, first of all, let me tell you, there's a good bit of reading involved, because anytime there's any kind of interest in doing research or investigating something, on my part, I immediately go in and look at all the information I can get on the area, the location overall, any past reports of anything that may be connected to what I'm about to step into. I go back and look at the history of if it's a area that's owned by somebody. I'll go back and look at the area, the history of the people who were there before, even if I can, the prehistory before it became an even civilized area, before it became a town, whatever the area is. I want to dig as deep as I can into the history of that place and find out the who, what, where, why, and when of it. And a lot of people are like, that's already a lot of work. Well, it is, but here's the thing. In order to get a really clean investigation of something, you need to be armed with as much information as possible. This is one of the reasons why I tell people being an investigator is not for everybody, because if you're serious about it, the first thing you're going to do is not let any corner be untouched when it comes to doing the actual research, digging in and looking at things like that. And then on top of that, not only do I look for the historical information behind a place, but I want to look at where it sits on the map, what's around geologically. Is it near water? Is it a high contents of some type of ore or limestone or any kind of minerals or deposits that I should know about that could be affecting the situation? What is its altitude? What is this typical weather like? Uh, all the things that you wouldn't suspect. Okay, you want to try to rule out all of that stuff. You want to get to know what's there, uh, how the area works on a natural level, and what how that may affect the outcome of an investigation. Because, for instance, water, you know, if a place it has a lot of water around it, it's naturally going to be humid. So there's going to be things that happen in a more humid climate that's going to be different than a dry climate environment. Okay, so there's things like that you got to consider and taking into deep consideration about when you're looking at a place. And I know everybody's already going, God, this sounds boring. But here's the thing again, like you can go in and with a couple of cat balls and whatever, on RF meter and play around and ask questions all day long or whatever you want to do. Or you can go and hunt for tree knocks and growls in the woods all day long if you want to. But if you don't know the area, if you don't know, for instance, if you're going out into the woods to investigate a cryptid, let's talk about that for a minute, okay? So if you're going to a place you've never been to before and you're going to go out blindly to investigate, hey, is there a dog man or Bigfoot or something else out here? If you do not know what kind of animals live there naturally, you are not going to know anything about what they sound like, how they act, all the things that you need to know about the natural inhabitants of the area. And this is one of the things that is really important to understand. If you don't know the nature of an area that you're doing your investigation or your research on, you're going to wind up with a lot of kind of uneventful stuff. You're going to wind up with misinformation, and you're not going to be considered very credible. Okay, so I always try to find out everything I can find out about the area that I'm going to. First of all, like there's several places that I'm looking at right now. Again, I haven't put all of them on the map yet. Because right now I'm trying to focus on the trip coming up to Red Boiling Springs. But here's the thing, like, so I'm getting reports of something happening in the Cedars of Lebanon right now again, which has been an off again, on again thing. I get reports of stuff every once in a while. This one came with receipts, like she sent me photos and videos of things that I need to be aware of in the area. So naturally, since I don't know anything really about the area, the first thing I want to do is find out, okay, well, what is the Cedars? What's there? What is it used for currently? And then go from there. Because without the proper knowledge, I could be chasing my tail for a very long time with something like that. And getting overlooking important details, overlooking things that probably should be, because let me be very clear about this. An investigation can go one way or the other in a way that's not going to be very favorable. Okay. You will either you can either get the wrong information and start passing bad information to people and create a whole bunch of issues with people wanting to go in and research an area and all this stuff that really doesn't have a lot going on enough after all. And then you're going to lose credibility. Or you're not going to find very much. You're going to overlook a lot of things. You're not going to read into anything at all, and you're going to come away empty handed and you're going to write it off. And then somebody else is going to come around and they're going to go, oh, wait a minute. I don't know what they're talking about because, there's structure evidence, there's footprints. We found hair in this particular area here or whatever. It doesn't quite match anything in the area. Then you're going to lose credibility again because now you've turned around and you've said, no, I don't believe there's anything here, when somebody else is finding a lot of evidence to prove differently. So either end of the spectrum, you can tend to be in a very big bind. Yeah, see, that's the thing, like right around there. And I have photos that the one lady sent to me of like large openings in the ground, cave openings there in the park, and so forth. She sent me a lot of photos of openings, and some of those, the one in particular that she sent me that was an opening in the ground, like it was deep. It was deep, and it looked like, just from what I could tell in that photo, that it went in different directions. So it wasn't just like a hole in the ground. This was a natural hole, that was a natural opening, and it was quite a big space. So yeah, there is a lot of cave stuff going on there, and a lot of stuff going on in general there in the Cedars that is worth looking at. So that's the other thing you want to find out. If you have a place like that, you want to find out, are there cave systems? How far do they know that the cave system goes through? Have they mapped it out yet? Is it something that somebody's been doing research on already, as far as caves and all that kind of things? Ashes, hey, how are you? You want to make sure that you know all the stuff you need to know before you go in. Another reason you want to know about the caves, like the one spot I'm talking about, is just a big hole in the ground. So if you don't know that that's out there, you're going to be walking around blindly and step right into this thing because it's not easily seen. It's off the paths, and it's in an area that if you are off the path doing this and you don't know where you're at, you're going to fall into this hole. And if you fall into it, you could probably get seriously injured, and people are not going to find you. Right, and that's the other thing. Is there an underground water system in the caves? That's another thing you want to know about, because obviously you don't want to fall into an underground lake. That could be a very bad day. Exactly. That's, again, another reason why, especially if you're going to go trolloping in the woods, you want to be careful enough. You want to know enough about the area to know what to expect. Is there reports of wild boars out that way? In the area where we're at, the other thing you want to know, because it's becoming more and more of a thing, have bears been seen in the area? If they've been seen in the area, you're going to want to know, hey, I need to look out for bears, especially if it's a season when mama's going to have baby bears around. But you definitely want to know those things. The other thing is you want to know about, hey, is the area that I'm going to, is it heavily populated with copperheads and rattlesnakes? There's several, and even water moccasins and so forth like that. There's several different types of, depending on where you're going to, where you live at, there's several different types of venomous snakes that you're going to want to know about. So all of this stuff, you really need to know, you need to be informed about all the things. natural as well as unnatural stuff dealing with the area. And one of the things that, when I mention weather, that you want to be aware of is things like temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, all the things that can cause stuff to go on in an area depending on what you're researching that may affect the research or your equipment. I mean, you're going to be taking equipment out there. If it's a really humid area, obviously you don't want to take equipment out there that's going to get damaged by a lot of humidity or whatever. So, or be affected by the humidity. So, it's really important to arm yourself with as much information as possible. Take notes, figure out a way of a system. Hey, how are you doing, Michigan? Find out, figure out a system that's going to work for you as far as gathering information, taking notes, um, anything that you normally do when you're reading to gather information. That's what you're going to want to do for the research that you're doing. Like I use a type of Zettelkasten. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Um, System where I use note cards and a numbering system for the note cards. And so I have this whole system set up where I have the 5 classifications, scientific classifications set up, and each one of those have subcategories and so forth. I have that set up already, a filing system set up like that for any books I read, any articles, any videos, anything I take notes on. I also have a setup where I have cards just for, like, if I run across something that I need to further expand my research on or whatever, I can go back and I can look and go, oh, wait a minute. I need to find out about this and this and this too, because this was the things that I made notes on about it. So, and I don't discard anything either. Once it's on a card, it stays in my system, because then I can go back, I can put notes on there and so forth, and references to tie it back to the cards it's on, all that information is on and so forth, and create a system where I can go through and numerate with numbers. God, my English is getting horrible. Um, I can go back and I can look at everything and know where those cards are located in the files, and go back and look at the notes for that. And I can compile, because I take those notes in my own and use them in my own words. So when I go back to compile a report on something, I can literally take it right off my note cards, because it's my notes and the way I would write them down anyway. I can just simply transfer that information onto the paper to include in my report. So I'm not having to go back and through notebooks and all that. I mean, you can do that if you really want to. Some people are really good with doing the whole thing where they're flipping through notebooks looking for all their notes and everything. But so that's how I compile information as when it comes to the research element of it. So I look at books, I look at newspapers, video, any transcripts I can get a hold of, anything. If I need to interview people, I interview people. Whether it's a local historian, if it's something that I feel like I need to find somebody who is an expert in something. For instance, last week we were talking about dogman attacks. If you go and you interview somebody who's an expert in dog handling or whatever, or they know a lot about particular species of canines, you know, you go and you interview that person because that person's a resource. And so you treat the interview, you want to record it. That's the other thing. You got to know about what equipment to use when. And recorders, video cameras, your telephone, all of those things are great instruments for being able to record uh, interviews or even take audio notes, on and so forth. If you're reading a book or whatever, if you really want to do audio notes, you can do that. There's a lot of advantage to using the tools that you have in front of you to be able to help you gather information. So interviews is a great thing. Going to the public library, most libraries have historians there. They also have people who are knowledgeable about other things. Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, there's just some people, there are some things you learn over time. Talking to park rangers is never a good idea, especially if they're on their job. Like, if you find a park ranger that comes up to you and goes, "Hey, I need to talk to you sometime," because he's been watching you, and he decides, "Hey, I want to have a conversation with this guy and tell him what I know," then that's okay. But I really try to avoid conversations with park rangers who are on duty. I mean, again, you have to use critical thinking. If you go into a place, you know, it's kind of like going into Target and you know making yourself suspect with asset protection. I mean, you just don't. You want to be. You want to use your brain when you're out doing investigations. So obviously, there's some things you just don't do. And talking to park rangers is kind of like picking up a live wire. Why are you going to do it? So there's certain things that you need to use critical thinking and your reasoning skills about whenever you're dealing with all of those things, all the stuff like that. You don't want to just like make it like put a big neon sign on your head going, "Hey, I'm out looking for cryptids," or, "Hey, I'm breaking into this building right now to go check out a ghost story," or whatever. There's some things you just really don't want to do. So, and that's the other thing with going through investigation, like your reasoning skills. You've got to think and plan out, "Hey, this is what I'm going to be doing." So you get an idea of what your task is. You start listing out all the things that you can think of that you need to do as far as um, where, what, when, and why, and how, and who you're going to go to for resource information as far as uh, any kind of professional information need or anything like that, dealing with whatever your investigation is. You want to make sure you've checked out all that stuff, but you want to make sure that you have it in your plan too. So setting down and coming up with a plan for all that is kind of important as well. And that probably should happen before you start doing research, actually. But because I always try to have some idea. I mean, now I don't have to sit there and write it all down as much, okay, well, I need to do this and this and because now I've been doing it long enough that it kind of comes naturally. But if you're, especially if you're a new researcher, you definitely want to, or investigator, you're going to want to draw up a plan of everything that you need to do. Now, I'll still go back and make like a list of resources that I need to look into or whatever. If somebody gives me an idea of, "Hey, you need to go talk to such and such about this or that and another. If this is what you're checking out, then I'll write down their name, where I can find them and what it is that I need to ask them about or need to talk to them about. And there's another card, and I put it into my Zell custom and there it is. Um, right. I mean, obviously, if one of the rangers comes up and goes, "What are you doing?" I mean, if you're pulling out equipment and so forth when rangers are around, that's not necessarily like a compass is one thing because that is something people use when they're hiking. Flashlights people use when they're hiking. If it's stuff that people normally use when they're hiking, that's great and fine and wonderful. But if you're pulling a REM pod out of your backpack and turning it on with a ranger saying they're looking at you, you are literally opening yourself up for problems. But you know, we're not even there yet, though. We're talking about all the stuff that we're doing before we even get to the point of a ground investigation. Because most people pack their bag with all their toys in it and go marching out the door, and that's what they got. They have a location. They know where they're going. That's it. Um, but once you've gathered your information, once you know enough about the area that you feel confident that you may not really find anything else surprising about it, then it's time to start planning on the actual footwork with the investigation itself. Now, I will tell you this, pack something to write with and take note because even during the investigations, there are times when you find stuff that you're kind of like, oh, I need to research this. Is there something, was there something that you ran into you weren't expecting that may need some information behind it so that you'll know what you're talking about whenever somebody asks you about it? For instance, if you come upon a completely abandoned camp on, in the woods, and there's nobody there, and it looks like it's been sitting for a long period of time, maybe you need to see if you can find out if there was any mention in news articles or anything else about an event happening there that may be tied to that. I mean, you're gonna want to know some things, okay? Um, if you see fresh tracks where work vehicles or something has been messing around in an area that you're at, you want to know what's going on there. So anything that you observe that's new information that you need to go back and research, you can write it down. But now we get to the point where we've got our research, we know everything we need to know about this area. So what's next? Well, here's where things can get kind of interesting sometimes. Depending on what you're doing, depending on what type of research you're doing, you're going to want to make sure that you have all of the tools that you need to take with you, so you're not going to be surprised. Now, you'll learn over time that there's different tools that will help you, because obviously you're not going to acquire big, fancy, expensive machinery or anything right off the bat. And I would strongly advise against that to start with, to be honest with you. And in a lot of cases, when the first time you go out to investigate something anyway, you should go more than once anytime you go anywhere. But the first time you go out, I would take the bare essentials and the simplest equipment first. So like maybe a barometer and a thermometer, definitely a compass, um, something to measure with. So a measuring tape would be really good. Um, string, cord, twine, something like that. Any like plastic bags and tweezers to collect samples of stuff. And if you find something you need a sample of, um, maybe small jars, small vials of glass vials or whatever to get samples of something to do those sorts of things with. So again, when it comes to packing for, especially the first time out, you're going to want to use critical thinking. You're going to want to you're going to want to think about all the things you may run up against and what you may need in the process. Now, obviously, carrying some water and some plaster of Paris if you're going to go cryptid hunting is not a bad idea, because I don't know how many times I've heard people say, "Well, I would have cast that print that I found because it was a really good print and I got an okay photo of it, but I could have gotten a really great cast, but I didn't have anything with me to cast." So again, knowing what you may need, and it's not always like, we're not talking about the obvious things every time. Having, you know, some latex or some type of gloves, vinyl gloves or something to put on your hands to protect your hands from whatever you may need to come in contact with at some point. Um, you- I mentioned something to put samples in and so forth. Twine. You never know. Two things you don't ever want to leave without, believe me. Even if I know duct tape is a joke to a lot of people, but duct tape is a really good thing to take with, and some twine. You never know when you're going to need string for something before it's over with. Even if you use, say if you don't have a tape measure with you or whatever, if you do have some twine with you, you can always cut twine to the length of something that you need to measure later and go back and go, "Oh, by the way, this was this long. Oh, okay." Again, you're going to want to make sure you've got like post-it notes or sticky notes or something to take with you to label things as well, because obviously, if you have a bunch of random pieces of twine in a box and you don't know what's what, you're going to not understand why you have all these random pieces of twine. So the measurements are not going to do you any good. Again, a supply of pens is really important, especially fast drying plant pens, because if you're out in the wild or you're in somebody's house and you're doing an investigation, paranormal investigation or whatever, or you're just out like trying to, you know, investigate a UFO sighting or something, having quick drying pens to jot down notes and measurements and all that kind of stuff is really good to have. Um, Having at least one or two small notebooks with you, that kind of thing. There's a lot of things you want to think about, and eventually at some point I'm going to talk about more about the list of things that I consider essential for taking with me, especially on that first investigation. And oddly enough, this time of year, Victor, hey, how are you doing? This time of year, I'm going to just be honest with you, is a very happy 4th of July, guys. I forgot to even say that yet, but happy 4th. This time of year is a really good time of year to gather some supplies. So, because it's back to school time. So, a good stash of pencils, pens, notepads, sticky notes, any kind of office supplies that you think you may need to take with you on an investigation. It's a good time to kind of stock up on some of that stuff, because it's all going to be at a better price than usual for back to school, right? And some people are like, "Well, you're taking what?" Believe me, the stores have plenty of stock for everything, unless it's something really weird, like a calculus tool or whatever, which you're not going to really need anyway, unless you're like really diving into some crazy mathematical. stuff, and I don't ever deal with that part of investigation, to be honest with you. If I felt like I needed calculus for an investigation, I'd be like, I'd hand it over to somebody else. But anyway, so we'll go through another time. I'll go through and start listing like my list of things, because it can get to be much sometimes. But again, I only take enough to cover one backpack. Like once that backpack is full, that's all I'm taking with me for that first trip out. Okay. So regardless of what it is that you're doing, the first trip out, like you're not going to want to. I mean, okay, let me back up for a second, because I don't want to say this wrong. The majority of stuff on your first trip out, depending on what you're doing, because if you're researching cryptids or a ghost situation, you may or may not need some of the more high techy things, depending on what you're doing and what your plan is with it. You should probably have a really good plan if you're doing something that is going to need like in-depth research. Like if you got somebody calling you going, "Hey, I think I've got a haunting in my house," and they're wanting you to like investigate it, do a deep dive into it, then you're going to need some other stuff, but we'll go into that later. So here's the thing that I want you to think about when it comes to the high techy stuff, though. Okay, right? EMF meters and that kind of stuff is always good to have uh, in any investigation. Actually, like I really prefer the digital meters and so forth when it comes to doing the initial uh, baseline readings and so forth in places, because you want to see what's out there that may affect the investigation, or may have affected the situation that people were thinking they were seeing or experiencing at the time. So certain levels of certain things can cause certain reactions within human beings. You need to know what all that really is about. Again, a lot of research goes into an investigation. You can't just go in with your thumb up your butt and say, "I think I'm going to do an investigation today. Let me go take my EMF reader and my notebook and my camera, my phone, and and let's go do an investigation." I mean, you can try it that way, but it's not really. I try to plan a lot better than that. Um, Here's what I'm going to say about the equipment thing. Okay. Um, Usually, especially if I know it's my first time out someplace, I'm mostly going to try to focus on things that's going to read the stuff that I need. So maybe the most exotic thing I may take with me is a Geiger counter, because radiation. You kind of want to know if that's a thing in the area that you're at, or what level of radiation is naturally in that area, because radiation is all around us. So basic readings, you want to get baseline readings on everything in the location that you're at. Um, Again, any weather related readings is really important to get. You also want to try to I would strongly suggest checking out the weather reports for the day that this event happened, or the last thing that happened at this location, because it may be multiple events. You go back and check out what was the dew point, what was the barometric pressure, what was the temps that day, was it raining, was it not raining, all those kinds of things. But again, going back to the equipment, honestly, sometimes outside of maybe getting some basic readings of things, the only other equipment I may take with me is a pendulum and dowsing rods. Seriously. That may be the only equipment I take with me on an investigation, especially the first if I'm going there for multiple times. Um, because the first investigation is really for me personally is really about fact finding. I'm like, I mean, if you're just going in, let me clarify something to you guys. I'm really talking about like doing serious investigation. If you're just going in to see if a house is haunted or not, an EMF meter, dowsing rods, and you know, and something to record with, maybe, um, maybe your spirit box and a voice recorder, you're good to go. But honestly, actually, the voice recorder would be one of the things that I would suggest taking with you the first time around too, because it is kind of a good thing to maybe get an idea. Hey, were there any repeats present on this first thing? I try to find at least one thing with the dowsing rods, the pendulum, any of the monitors that I have. I've got to find one thing at least that makes me raise an eyebrow and go, oh yeah, this is worth coming back for. And because if I don't, I may go back a second, maybe even a third time. But by the second or third time, if I'm not getting some kind of tangible reading on something, then I'm really more prone to saying, we're done, and maybe going back a future time to see if anything has changed. Right. See, the reference books like that are very important to have as tools for the areas that you're going to be investigating. Knowing things like what parallel is this on? Are the caves, you know, have the caves in this area been studied? All that thing. What I will tell you don't do on that first investigation, especially personally, like the things I'm not going to do is pull out every single toy that I have. I'm not going to pull out, my EMF reader, my REM pods. If you use cat balls or anything like that, I'll pull all those things. I'm not going to pull all of that stuff out on the first thing. Okay. Just not going to happen. Because if you take your entire arsenal and set it up, if you know you're going back for multiple things, here's the secret to what I do in my investigations. If I know, say I'm going to go back to the same place 2 or 3 times, I'm going to progressively I'm going to do what I call a progressive investigation. Excuse me, where I go and I look at the area and I do like basic stuff the first time around. Like I'll carry maybe 1 or 2 things to like my my phone camera and maybe another camera, as a backup, just to record things. I will do that. Um, and it depends again on the investigation because if it's someplace that I'm really not like trying to get, a bunch of hardcore core information right off the bat, I may only take like a simple camera and my phone to record any visual stuff with. Um, the voice recorder, you know, that sort of stuff. Second time around, if I know I'm gonna go, if say this is gonna be a three part investigation. I'm going to do this 3 different times at 3 different periods. I'm also going to try to pick different times to go. Like when I say different times, like I'm going to go, in the evening, late night, maybe evening to late night one time. Another time I'm going to go early morning if it's accessible to go to it in early morning. And then the last time I may go at a completely different time of day altogether. And that way, if something is happening at different times, it especially if it's the same thing and it's happening at different times. If you're catching the same thing in different places and different times, then this is a significant thing. Like if you catch, say, in a house, you catch different doors opening at different times of the day by themselves, you know, is it you can go back and you can check, hey, was the humidity high here? Um, no, okay. Was this happening? Was that happening? Was there wind blowing? Okay, nope, 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 nope. Oh, so I've narrowed down all the things. I've I've tried to debunk this happening and I can't debunk it, and it's happened in different places and different times. So maybe there's something to this. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why I try to pick different times in the progressive investigation. Okay. Um, the third time or the second time around, like I'm going to start carrying more things to gather data and collect data with. So more cameras, more audio recording equipment, definitely more sensors, more toys. Okay. And when I say toys, I mean, I'm talking about like that's when I start pulling out things like REM pods and that sort of thing and trying to get some kind of reaction if I can. All right. And so I kind of think of it as like the beginning, the first time around is the introduction to the place. So I'm trying to figure out what might be a thing to look into. Is there something important about this place first? And then what I may be up against, what I may be looking at here, is there something I need to prepare to in the second time around to try to document and find information on and get information about? Yeah. The second phase is when I start gathering more information. I'm digging a little deeper. I'm starting to record more things. I'm starting to try to search out to see what evidence, what actual evidence I can get. And I start digging for yeah, yeah. I In your case, I could see wanting to record some things on that property, to be honest with you, especially in and around the house. Um, so the second visit, that's when you're going to want to pull out a little more of the arsenal, become a little more vigilant about what you're wanting to try to find there, what you're wanting to find out. Maybe you're going to want to dig deeper into some of the more esoteric things that's happening in the house. So if there's a lot of knocking going on, you want to try to debunk that. If you can't debunk it, then it's time probably to take it to the next level and see if there's a paranormal reason behind it. Uh, if you don't find any paranormal reason behind it, and you've debunked all of the possible choices for it, uh, that's when I move it up to the next level. So if say this was a 3-part investigation, by the 3rd time around, I'm I'm in it for the long haul. I want a full, like, 6, 12 hours in the building or in the place, whatever I'm doing. You know, if it's a place where there's a UFO hotspot, I wanna be able to go camp there for a good period of time to see if there's something going on. Again, you have to kinda base it on what it is that you're doing, because not all investigations are always going to be treated the same way. Every single investigation that I've gone on has always been a case by case situation. I treat each one, even though I have certain things that I do, I alter those according to what I know is going to work for me for that investigation. So obviously, if I'm going to hunt cryptids, I'm not going to do that the same way that I'm going to treat a haunted house. Or if I'm going to a place of high strangeness, I'm not going to treat it the same way that I would a cryptid hunt. Okay. So again, you have to think about all of these things and prep for it accordingly. I know some people are by now are going, holy crap, this is way more work this is why I'm telling you, investigation and research is not for everybody, especially the type of investigation that I do. Now, this is what sets me apart from the jump scare community. Okay. This is why I'll take longer periods of time in between investigations. Especially if it's like a really deep investigation, I'll take more time with one investigation. And then once I've concluded that investigation, I'll take a period of time where I just don't. Maybe I just do nothing but research and work on the podcast, and I don't do any more investigating for a while. Like it's been almost a year since I went to the last investigation that I was at, which um was the old stone jail in Franklin, Kentucky. It's been almost a year. And the Red Boiling Springs investigation is coming up in about 2 weeks. So, um, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I don't always take a year between the investigations, but I give myself some time to kind of go through and collect all the data, do the thing, come to a point where I'm either A, going to write it off as, you know, natural occurrences. B, it's going to either be, if it's not natural occurrences, then B, it's inconclusive, or I get to that C mark and I go, I have no choice but to deem this a paranormal event. So, and whenever I get to that point where I'm concluding an investigation and I try to make a choice as to whether that investigation is closed or not, obviously an investigation becomes closed when I find no evidence to support paranormal activity, or I find evidence to support paranormal activity. If I choose that I'm not going to go any further with that investigation, then I close it. But if I say, honestly, it's inconclusive, I may choose to go back and continue that investigation again. Now, there are 2 places that I've been to since I've been doing this podcast that I've gone to and I reached an inconclusive uh, answer on whether it was a paranormal hotspot or not. And I'm not going to go back there. And here's the reason why. The first one, obviously, um, because they have decided that they're not going to offer paranormal research being done in the property. Obviously, I'm not going to do that anymore. And that will happen from time to time. Some people will be like, this was fun for a while, but it's starting to get a bit much, or I'm just not interested in doing this anymore. So they'll literally say, I'm done. We're not going to do any more paranormal stuff on the property. Obviously, then you have to write it off. The other one is I did not reach a conclusion, but there is not enough of evidence one way or the other to sway me to want to go back there. Okay, so with that, sometimes an inconclusive finding can be the final finding. Hey, Robin, how are you doing? If I'm going in and, and it's kind of looking iffy, there's some stuff, maybe an obvious paranormal thing happened there, but there's not enough there to draw my interest to go back to it. Then the way I handle that every single time is I'll say inconclusive, final. So if you ever hear me or see me marking a case inconclusive and final, it means that I just kind of lost interest in it. There wasn't anything to bring me back. It might have some paranormal activity, but hey, what if it's residual haunting? If it's a residual haunting, I may have enough of information to say it's a residual haunting, and I could conclude it by saying, it's actively haunted. But honestly, my personal opinion is that residual hauntings are not, they're just residual hauntings. It's just a repetition of something, and we don't understand a lot about residual hauntings. But the one thing that we do know about them is they're not intelligent hauntings. Okay, so I'll put that in the inconclusive, not going back, if that's all it is. And I'll even note residual hauntings in there. But the ones that remain open and active are the ones that give me enough of compelling information that I feel is worth my time, because time is something it's not a renewable resource. We all know that. So if it's worth my time to go back there to learn more about what's happening, then I'll keep it open and active. And those tend to be the majority of the inactive, or the open cases are usually open and active, meaning that at some point, if I have the time and the resources, I plan on going back to this place to collect further data. And yes, you're going to be starting to hear fireworks going off in my neighborhood now, which is fine because we're almost at the top of the hour, and I really don't want to go into a whole lot more of this tonight, because it is a holiday weekend, and I do tend to come back and touch on this again some more. And kind of make this sort of a little bit of a series, maybe. But the thing is, and this is what I want to really kind of bring home at this point, is when my personal opinion, okay, this is all personal opinion on my part, like, because I don't claim to be an authority on anything, okay, no matter, there's no amount of years of investigation that makes anybody an authority on anything. Um, yeah, in your case, you guys would be hard to write it off as um from everything that I've seen. Here's another thing that I'm going to make very important to you guys. A very like I cannot emphasize this enough. If you're watching this tonight or you're watching this later on, please understand that when it comes to um not only do I consider myself not an authority on anything, but when it comes to, how do I want to put this? You know what? I've kind of gone into this enough. I'm not gonna keep beating that dead horse. So drawing conclusions. That's really where I want to land at here. So I had somebody yesterday tried to, like, she kept sending me videos of things over and over again, and somebody who I really think I'm planning on going to do an investigation in their private home, because I believe there's a possibility there could be some activity there. But she kept trying to tell me, or trying to get me yesterday to, based on the videos that she was sending, to tell her that something was negative or what or not in her house. This is one of the things I will not do. I will not draw a conclusion about something based on video or photographic evidence or audio evidence alone. Like, if I'm not going into a place and physically investigating it, then yeah, I can say it's interesting. I can say it could be paranormal, maybe, but am I going to give an opinion on it and say this is, I feel like this is, no, no. Um, the worst kind of evidence is eyewitness testimony. And it's not that I don't believe everything that somebody tells me. What I don't believe is what our brains are capable, that our brains are capable of giving us absolute truth all the time, because perception plays a lot into things, okay? How we perceive what we see, hear, think, taste, smell, touch, you know, it plays a lot into things. It's like, I went to an investigation one time, and this person kept telling me, there's one of the things I kept insisting on was that there was some sticky residue or something on that would show up on everything from time to time. And I'm like, well, okay, but can you describe it? Does it how does it feel? Sticky. It's sticky, but does it feel grainy? Does it feel like an oily sticky? What kind of sticky are we talking about here? Does it have a smell to it? Is it cold? Is it warm? What is it? Give me something to go on. And they were not really specific about a lot of stuff, which kind of led me to believe, this could be one thing or the other going on here. So, I went in there, and sure enough, there was a couple of places where, you know, like I touched a wall at one point, and there was this kind of stickiness to the wall in one spot, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of weird," and and I don't know, like, if it was something that was on the wall before, something that the wall had been treated with or whatever before, but, I tried to smell, there was no smell, I tried to get it was just sticky. It felt to me like old tape on, you know what I mean? It was that kind of sticky. It wasn't like it wasn't like, something that you could say 100% was paranormal, and I was like, you know, I understand you're finding this in different places throughout the house, and it could be a lot of things, but in my personal experience with researching the paranormal, I have never had this happen, um, in a way that I felt it was evidence of something. Like, if there's something like that involved, it's like oils or something else, and it just comes and goes randomly with no reason behind it. There's a lot of things before I'll call something paranormal. Okay. So again, trying to debunk things before you want to look at the mundane before the magical. Okay. You always want to look at the mundane first. You want to rule out all the things. So before you go, somebody goes and starts trying to get you to say, "Oh yeah, your house is 100% haunted, and this and this and this is the proof of it." You want to rule out all the things, especially when it comes to noise, smells. You know, I have somebody who went to a location recently, and one of the things they kept saying is that people kept getting sick when they would go into this place. It was so much the evil was so bad there, it would make them physically ill. Well, the person who went in to investigate it found mold in there. Not just mold, but different types of mold. There was stagnant water in there. There was a lot of things in the building that could lead to people getting sick from toxins in the building. So obviously, and he had samples of some of the mold and so forth. He was actually going to have it tested to see what it was and if it was something that could make somebody sick. So obviously, there are things you want to do to debunk the stuff because not everything that we don't understand right away is paranormal. So before I go through and pronounce something definitely paranormal, I'm gonna I'm gonna beat it just senseless trying to figure out is is this really unexplainable? And if it's not unexplainable, then I'm going to advance it forward until I find out something, or I found not find out that it still has remained unexplained. So that's one of the things that I definitely wanted to bring to the forefront tonight is weighing out the difference between the paranormal and the non-paranormal, the natural and the unnatural, or the supernatural. You know, and anytime a good investigator, personal opinion, my opinion is though, is a good investigator is going to exhaust all possibilities before they come to a conclusion. So in some cases, it may take years. In some cases, you may never reach a conclusion. But, and I know there's somebody saying they're watching this going, well, then how do you what's even the point of it? Because if you're not going to reach a conclusion. So again, remember I said that I've seen some places that had evidence of paranormal activity of some kind, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't a big enough bang for my money that I felt like I need to spend any more time with it. So say I determine that I catch an EVP, or I catch enough of readings of something that I can't really debunk, that it looks like it could be paranormal. Or, I pick up a clear image of something, a clear enough image of something on video or on a photo that looks like it's probably paranormal. That's when I say, okay, here's my findings. This, up until this point, everything seemed normal, but here this happened. You know, maybe something came through the spirit box. Maybe I got an audio recording, an EVP. Again, maybe some of the equipment started reacting in a way that could be considered paranormal. You know, that's when I start sharing my findings on things in a way that leads me to believe that this particular thing in this particular place was paranormal, and still without deeming it haunted or a a high strangeness hotspot. Yeah. Now, I will tell you, when it comes to some things, like obviously I've never been to the Meadows before. There's enough of information that has been gathered from researchers at the Meadows that my personal opinion is something strange is going on there, possibly paranormal. Most likely paranormal based on the evidence we have so far. Lebanon. I've not spent a lot of time investigating Lebanon. Lebanon is a very large area. The area of high strangeness in this particular part of the state expands over quite a large area. It's all based on, right now, currently, as far as I'm concerned, it's all based on firsthand accounts, eyewitness testimony. There's a little bit of photographic evidence. There's a little bit of, you know, documentation from police records or whatever, and that kind of thing. There's a little bit of stuff there that makes me go, okay, we're going to put this on our radar now, because now there's evidence piling up to suggest that something's not right here. I've had personal experiences in the area, um, missing time, that kind of thing, that's made me go, and it's happened frequently enough, and in the same area at different times, in different place, different ways, the same area um, produce the same type of results multiple times. So I can say from my personal experience with this area, there's something kind of wonky here. So yeah, do I want to put it on my radar? Absolutely. Is it worth my time to investigate? Absolutely. What type of investigation, when, where, why, how, and who, and so forth. I haven't really made a plan for it yet, but I do know that even as of the last week, I've received enough of information, enough of photographic information, enough of video information to know that the trigger is there. The natural curiosity trigger is there. something's not right here. And based on historical evidence, you know, I know that certain things about this area line up with what's true in other places that have similar activity. Okay. So I can base that to we have enough of data. When you've collected enough of data that you know that what you're dealing with has similarities to other cases, that's also a clue. Okay. So I know I've given you guys a lot tonight. I've been talking for about an hour and 15 minutes now. Basically, what I'm trying to get across to you tonight is not only kind of an intro into how I investigate and what I consider an actual investigation, but it's also my way of saying, hey, when I'm doing my podcast, when I'm going over these things, when I'm doing investigations, when I'm talking about the stuff that I talk about, historical information, anything like that, I have gone through and thoroughly researched it. I've thoroughly, um, yeah, that's the other thing. Trying to get the locals to talk about Lebanon is really hard, but you really don't even need to do that because there's been enough of stuff put in given put in my direction. My attention is already on it. So I really don't even need anybody else to come forward. I would like to have more evidence, more accounts of things from people, but do I need it? No, I don't, because now at this point, again, like I said, I've got enough to know that something it's worth checking into. When somebody gives me a photograph of a wolf print, a large wolf print in a place that wolves don't should not be existing, and more than one person has looked at it and said, "Yeah, that that looks like it needs to be checked out." Then it's time to start putting it on the books and saying, "Well, we need to find out something about this." But the bottom line is you know when I talk about something, when I bring up when I have a guest, or I'm talking about a case I'm working on, or I have worked on in the past, or I'm bringing up something, you know, part of tonight's part of when I'm sharing what I do, when I'm sharing my knowledge about what goes on behind the background, part of it is not just to teach you guys another perspective on how to do things, but it's also to show you, hey, this is how thorough and how deep down the rabbit hole I go. I'm not just saying here saying, "Oh, I found this great guest. He looks great. He looks, it looks like something worth spending 3 hours joking about on TV or what on YouTube." Yes, it is, Robin. It's Lebanon, Tennessee. And please go back and watch the part that you missed before, because if you're interested if you're either interested in how I do things, or you're interested in maybe learning something that maybe a technique or something that to bring into your investigation, or you're just curious about what people mean by investigating anyway, this is a good episode to go back and check out. You can fast forward through the parts that may be boring to you. The first couple of minutes, I was having technical issues, so there was that. But anything that you missed that you may want to go back and check out, go back and check it out. It's worth it. Just know that, that the level of energy and attention that I put into things, even if it's just a guest coming on talking about their experience, I'm going to let at least go to other podcasters at the minimum. I'm going to go to other podcasters and go, what'd you think? Or I'm going to watch an episode that another podcaster has. A lot of times I have people who either sit and watch a lot of YouTube videos, or podcasters suggest to me when it comes to guests, or I'm familiar with their work anyway. The Father Bob Bailey, who's coming on, will be in a pre-recorded episode coming up on the 9th, and I'll be in Red Boiling Springs. That will not be a live. It will be a premiere episode. I may do a live from location afterwards, but Father Bob Bailey, I know about him because he works with Nestor, and he has done spiritual warfare and even exorcism before. So he's coming on my show because I kind of already have him vetted. Chris McKinnell, he's the grandson of the Warrens. How can you miss that? Katie Page, she's known. She's a known experiencer and investigator. So you'll notice that most of the people, like even the people that I bring on the show who are just experiencers, maybe they're not investigators. Their only connection to it is that they've had an experience. They want to share it. Even those folks, I want some feedback. I want to know that they're not just some crazy person making up stories about some off the wall thing, that may or may not have happened to them. So it's very important that you understand, if you're watching my show, you're keeping up with it, you're following me, that I'm not here for entertainment purposes only. Okay. I will say that from time to time in the shows so I don't get dinged, but that is not the objective of this show. It's not the objective of the show to present a bunch of scary stories and keep you in the state of mind of, being terrified all the time. It is not the objective of the show to, misinform and mislead you and give you sensationalized clickbait. Not the object of the show at all. So if that's what you're looking for, you may want to find another show to check out. But if you're really looking for legitimate information, legitimate paranormal activity, legitimate findings, people who are legitimately well known in their field and whatever, then this would be the show for you. But anyway, all right. Thank you guys very much for watching tonight. Those of you who came on, I know it's a holiday. It is the 250th birthday of our country. It is getting really close now to time. Fireworks are going off all over the place for me. So I know that people are starting to do the things. So I appreciate you guys coming in tonight. If you were watching this later, thank you. I appreciate you. If you are interested, if you've made it this far and you're interested in more episodes, more content like this, where I go in discussing different types of things, like maybe one night I'll have a conversation and do a demonstration on um, different equipment or whatever, or different things like that. If those are things that you're interested in, then leave me a comment below and let me know. Hey, I would like to see more content like this, more informative content. It's not going to become the whole objective of the show, but I would like to share some of this from time to time with you guys if you're interested. Oh wow, Robin. So, let me ask you this before I end it tonight. Are you are you in like somewhat local? Is that why or have you researched the Lebanon, Tennessee area? Um, how how did you find out about the the situation here? Very curious about that before we close out tonight. But with that, though, for you guys um, who have been here for a minute and who have been watching, I you know, just know that as I'm going through and this transition of the change with the podcast and the branding and so forth, that we're still in very raw stages. I still don't have an outro yet to the show, which I have to come up with something at some point coming up. And there's other things that I'm working on. I still need to um, complete some projects with the social media and so forth, the store. Um, I'm going to eventually set up a Patreon and a Discord, for content as well. So as we begin to move into the Backwoods Signal transition, we're going to see more and more evolution of newer things, different things, newer techniques, newer things that I'm going to be doing with the social media of this that will bring us to a stronger point with Backwoods Signal. And I'm assuming, since I haven't heard back from Robin, hopefully Robin will contact me at some point and tell me a little bit about their connection with the Lebanon, Tennessee information, because I'm very curious about that. Anyway, thank you guys again. Next week, I believe I have Trenton Battle coming on next week. Oh, there's Robin. Oh wow, that may be interesting. I need to talk to you at some point. That would be interesting to get more information from you on that, because and maybe even have you on the show at some point if you're willing to come on, because I'm sure you have some really good stories to tell us and some information to share with us about your experiences with all this. Um, but yeah, So I'm definitely going to keep an eye on you. If you're interested in sharing some of your information with me, or even coming on the show at some point, contact me at backwoodssignal@gmail.com. And that goes for anybody that's watching tonight. So again, we're still in that kind of rough transitional phase of the podcast. Um, did not have a plan for 4th of July landing on a Saturday when I changed to Saturdays. So that's kind of why we're, thank you. I appreciate that. Why it's a little rough tonight. I do plan on going back and doing an edited version of this that will be a little more watchable than just sitting through an entire live. So I'll let you guys know when that comes up. Meanwhile, this has been Backwoods Signal. We're signing off, but the signal never stops. And we'll see you on the next transmission.